Good morning, everyone. Good evening for those of you joining us from the other side of the world. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you for joining this Alliances for Action webinar to support the ACP countries and industries. Today's topic for discussion is on the production, processing, and marketing of coconut milk, cream, and yogurt. We'll have a description of the value-added coconut products, targeting farmer cooperatives and micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Today, we have a full house. We have over 200 participants joining us from over 31 countries, and we welcome you all, and thank you for participating. To begin, we'd like to thank our donors and partners, especially the European Union, the CARIFORUM Directorate, the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, CARDI, and important regional partners. We also welcome and thank our speakers for today. We have Dr. Titiek from Indonesia, we have Dr. Chandi from Sri Lanka, and we have Mr. Thomas from the Philippines. They will be presenting today on various topics. At this point, I hand over to Djaafar, who is the Executive Director of ICC, to give us some welcoming remarks.
Thanks, Anita. Distinguished resource speakers from the Philippines, Mr. Tomas Medina, from Indonesia, Dr. Titiek Fajar, and from the Sri Lanka, Dr. Chandi Yalegama, our colleague from International Trade Center, CARDI, CARIFORUM, and the European Union as a donor. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and good evening to all. It is my greatest honor on behalf of ICC to express our warm welcome to all of you on the 5th webinar on the production, processing, and marketing of coconut milk, cream, and yogurt as part of the collaboration or MOU executed between International Trade Center and ICC under the financial support from the European Union and some institutions, with the purpose to develop mechanisms for transferring technology relating to value-added coconut products under the project Alliances for the coconut industry development, expansion, and enhanced support for the Caribbean. As we all aware that the coconut is valued for the numerous uses that can be derived from each part of the palm, including the kernel. Coconut milk, coconut cream, and yogurt are nutritious products having all essential amino acids, and the products can provide health benefits beyond the basic nutrition. It can be prepared into products with different fat levels to suit the needs of consumers for non-dairy milk, and it can also be fermented into nutritious and delicious yogurts. I'm so grateful with the study revealed that cysteine hormone content in coconut milk shows anti-aging activity in human adult skin fibroblasts in vitro without inducing cell proliferation, thus avoiding potential carcinogenic effects. It also have been suggested that coconut milk can be mixed with cow milk to produce more attractive probiotic products such as coconut yogurt. And we are going to hear the processing of it from the eminent resource speakers today. And as we all know, that market for coconut milk and cream has been increasingly growing. US import of this product grew at a CAGR of about 19% from 2012 to 2020. And there was a more than 100% surge in export of coconut milk, coconut cream, and coconut powder from the Philippines in 2020 compared to the same export in 2019. And the main export destination are the US and Malaysia. Other importer countries include Australia and Japan. So we are lucky to have eminent resource speakers today, Dr. Medina, Dr. Titiek, and Dr. Chandi, who will provide necessary information on the three products including the processing, quality standards, and market update of these products. And the protein and hormones contained in the products open new opportunities for research and application. And the protein-rich coconut milk has potential as a valuable growth promoters for plant and animals, and so need further studies to expand the application or uses. So ladies and gentlemen, without taking too much of your time, I look forward to your active participation and passionate dialogue during this webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Sadita.
Thank you very much, Delphina, and we appreciate your welcoming remarks. A few housekeeping matters. As you may have seen, this webinar is being recorded and it is available on some of CARDI's YouTube websites, as my colleague William has already placed in the chat. Also, there is interpretation in Spanish, so participants who are more comfortable in following Spanish, please use the interpretation feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to follow the discussion in Spanish, okay? Also, we'll have a Q&A session in the end, but in the meantime, during the presentations or afterwards, we encourage you to place your questions in the chat or to use the raise hand, and we will unmute you after the speakers have finished. So I'm going to put these housekeeping notes in the chat as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker for today, our first presenter for today, Dr. Titiek Farienti Djaafar from Indonesia, will be presenting on the processing of yogurt. Please welcome Dr. Titiek.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sanita. I will try share my presenting. Okay, you can see my slide.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, all participants. And in Indonesia, it's already 7:30 p.m. Hope you all are doing well. In advance, I would like to say thank to ITC and ICC for trusting me to give a little knowledge in this webinar. My title in this session is Coconut and its product, especially yogurt-like. The outline of my presentation are introduction, the use of coconut milk, yogurt-like from coconut milk, and conclusion. Introduction: the coconut tree is a member of the palm tree family and the only living species of the genus Cocos. The term coconut or the Arctic coconut can refer to the whole coconut palm, the seed, or the fruit, which botanical is drupe, but not a nut. The name comes of coconut from the Old Portuguese word coco, meaning heat or school. There are ubiquitous in coastal tropical region and are a cultural icon of the tropics. Coconut or Cocos nucifera is a fruit from South America, which is now one of the prima donna of world trade commodities. The natural habitat of coconut is found in coastal areas and on the fringes of desert. Production of coconut is concentrated on islands and coastal areas, as well as in the humid tropic such as Indonesia, Philippines, India, and so forth. The coconut is a tropical tree species mainly grown and harvested by small-scale farmers. We can see that coconut producing country in the world, the 5 large coconut producing countries in the world are India, Indonesia, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Papua New Guinea. From this table, it can be seen that the 5 countries have a relative stable for coconut production. The coconut is a very useful plant with a wide range of products being sourced from it. Coconut products are used to make everything from clothing to animal feed to beauty creams. In addition, coconut to the need for many industry as raw materials. This commodity plays an important role as a source of foreign exchange for many countries. Coconut used as a raw material in industrial from food and non-food such as food, drink, cosmetic, and household appliances. For example, we can use for raw material for table, chairs, and so forth. Now we see the industry tree of coconut. We can see that all parts of coconut plants can be used for human life. The fruit of coconut or kernel can produce coconut milk or coconut cream, and then coconut milk we can produce yogurt-like. We can use raw material for yogurt. The coconut milk is an opaque, milky white liquid extracted from the grated pulp of mature coconut. The opacity and rich taste of coconut milk are due to its high alcohol content, most of which is saturated fat. Coconut milk is a traditional food ingredient used in Southeast Asia, Oceania, South Asia, and East Africa. Coconut milk is a relatively stable oil in water emulsion with protein that acts as emulsifier and thickening agent. It is opaque and milky white in color and range in consistency from watery to creamy. The coconut milk contains water, fat, protein, carbohydrate, and energy, and also vitamin and minerals. In this table, we can see the classification of coconut milk and cream according to Codex Alimentarius, that the total solid, example coconut milk, range 12.7 to 25.3, and the compound is base for we can produce yogurt from coconut milk. Now, how to make coconut milk? Coconut milk is traditionally made by grating the white inner flesh of mature coconuts and mixing the shredded coconut pulp with a small amount of hot water in order to suspend the fat present in the grated pulp. The grating process can be carried out manually or by machine. The traditional process, coconut milk is traditionally divided into two grades, namely coconut cream or thick coconut milk and thin coconut milk. Coconut cream is extracted from the first pressing of grated coconut pulp directly without thought cheesecloth. Sometimes a small amount of hot water may also be added, but generally coconut cream is extracted with no added water. Thin coconut milk, on the other hand, is produced by the subsequent pressing after soaking the squeezed coconut pulp with hot water. In a commercially process, it is first done the husking and peeling, and then washing, grinding, and extraction. We can make in one equipment, and then we can produce coconut milk and then pasteurize and packaging. Now we can see the yogurt is a type of fermented milk product with the addition of lactic acid bacteria, such as Lactobacillus streptococcus or other strain of lactic acid bacteria. Optionally, dairy ingredients including cream, milk, partially skim milk, or skim milk used alone or in combination are cultured with Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus and result in a titrable acidity of at least 0.9% expressed as lactic acid. Pasteurization or ultra-pasteurization must be performed before adding the culture. This yogurt product may be heat-treated to kill viable microorganisms after culturing to extend product shelf life. This yogurt product may contain certain other dairy-based ingredients, nutritive carbohydrate sweetener, flavoring ingredients, color additive and stabilizer, and also vitamin A and vitamin D. What is the lactic acid bacteria? Lactic acid bacteria is non-sporing bacteria, cocky or rod shape, produce lactic acid as major end product during the fermentation of carbohydrate. The genera of lactic acid bacteria including Lactococcus, Lactobacillus, Leuconostoc, Pediococcus, Streptococcus, and so on. Lactic acid bacteria as grass generally recognized as safe for human consumption. And then lactic acid bacteria play an important role in food, agricultural, and clinical application. The role of lactic acid bacteria in milk fermentation, especially in yogurt. Lactic acid bacteria have been used to ferment or culture food for at least 400 years. They are used in particular in fermented milk product from all over the world, including yogurt, cheese, butter, buttermilk, kefir, and kumis. As a starter culture, ability to acidify milk to generate flavor and texture by converting milk protein due to their proteolytic activity, the milk acid taste and pleasant fresh. Now I will explain that the role of lactic acid bacteria in fermentation lactose, the carbohydrate of milk. We can see that lactic acid bacteria are classified into two categories, namely homofermentative bacteria and heterofermentative bacteria. Homofermentative lactic acid bacteria hydrolyze glucose by the glycolysis pathway, and heterofermentative bacteria of lactic acid bacteria hydrolyze sugar compound in from lactose by Leleur pathway. In milk fermentation, lactic acid bacteria hydrolyze or convert milk sugar, namely lactose, into glucose and galactose in the presence of the lactose enzyme. And then glucose and galactose are converted to lactic acid, alcohol, and flavor compounds. The role of lactic acid bacteria for healthy, lactic acid bacteria were categorized as probiotic bacteria. Probiotic are defined as living microorganisms when administered in adequate amount as part of food confer health benefit on the host. The health benefit are primarily come from the ability of probiotic in supporting the balance of macrobiota in intestine. Several commercial probiotic with health benefit documented from fermented food and human intestinal. From fermented food such as Lactobacillus casei sirota strain, we know the Yakult product, and then Lactobacillus plantarum that 13 isolated from a fermented milk in Indonesia, Lactobacillus plantarum mood 7 and Lactobacillus plantarum T3. This is isolated from cassava fermented from Indonesia. And in Indonesia, we called gatot. Human lactobacillus from human intestinal, such as Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus casei, Lactobacillus paracasei, and Lactobacillus rhamnosus. Several studies have been conducted related to the role of lactic acid bacteria in health, including we can see in this research conducted by Kambale et al. they are suggested that current evidence support the potential of the probiotic and symbiotic in the management of diarrhea in undernourished children. Probiotic or symbiotic intervention capable of reducing duration of diarrhea and hospitalization in undernourished children. And any study, we can see the role of probiotic bacteria in warding of viral infection. This research explained that the role of lactic acid bacteria in lung health and intestinal microbiota in viral infection. In people infection with the virus, this biosis will occur where the gut microbiota is not balanced. Lactic acid bacteria as a probiotic can make balance the gut microbiota for improve the health of human. And in this study, the consumption of probiotic has an effect on balance of the gut microbiota and gut health. From the Rahayu et al. Study, they suggested that significant decrease in body weight and BMI was determined in the treatment group, and analysis of GM gut microbiota show that Lactobacillus plantarum .13 cause the Firmicutes population and to decrease of Bacteroides population. And from this study, so that these biosis are microbiota gut balance disordered. This condition can be normalized by consume probiotic. That the probiotic have a role for health human. And then we see that how to make yogurt from milk. Yogurt fermented slightly acid often flavors semi-solid food made of milk and milk solid, to which cater to lactic acid bacteria, especially Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus have been added. We can see that milk, the beginning, we conduct pasteurized or sterilization, cooling, and then inoculation with mixed lactic acid bacteria culture, especially probiotic lactic acid bacteria, and then conducted the incubation or fermentation for 12 hours and produce to yogurt. And then how to make a yogurt from coconut milk. In making yogurt like from coconut milk, it is necessary to add cassava starch as a thickener and emulsifier. And then also we can add sugar as sweetener. And then we conduct heating during 5 minutes at 70 to 95 degrees Celsius, and then pour into a sterile jar and tightly close, and then cooling, and then inoculation. We can use 0.5% to 1% probiotic mixed lactic acid bacteria. And then we can conduct incubation or fermentation for 10 to 12 hours and to be produced yogurt-like. And conclusion in my presentation is coconut plant have many benefits where all part of the plant can be used for life. Coconut fruit can be processed into nutritious coconut milk. And then non-dairy yogurt from coconut milk is a diversified product that has the potential as healthy food because it contains probiotic lactic acid bacteria. Okay, thank you for attention to all participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Titiek, for providing us with some in-depth scientific knowledge on the processing of coconut milk into coconut yogurt. I am sure that you have raised the interest, or you have piqued the interest of many processors and other interested persons who want to go into non-dairy products, especially using coconut. So thank you very much, Dr. Titiek. We appreciate the information. To the participants joining us, we have the recording of this presentation and other presentations. We'll be providing the link as we go along as more persons join us. Feel free to ask your questions by putting it in the chat until we get to our Q&A session. So also we have Spanish interpretation, and we encourage you to follow with us as well. So thank you very much, Dr. Titiek, once again, and we appreciate your presentation. Next, we have Dr. Chandi Yalegama from Sri Lanka, and Dr. Chandi will be presenting on coconut milk and cream. So thank you, Dr. Chandi, for the opportunity to listen to you, and we welcome you to give your presentation.
Thank you, Shanita. Welcome you all for my presentation. Okay, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So my presentation is on processing of coconut milk and cream. And I am from Coconut Research Institute, Sri Lanka. And first we will see the export potential of coconut milk. And we know that from the previous presentation that the production of coconut in many countries. And when we see the potential of coconut milk, the coconut milk produced from many countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Samoa. They are. We can see that Indonesia is the main exporter of, Thailand is the main exporter of coconut milk and cream to the world, and followed by Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Philippines. So Samoa is a newcomer to the industry from the figures we can see. And coconut milk powder is produced from this coconut milk and coconut cream, and it is, we can see that Sri Lanka is the leading exporter of coconut milk powder to the world, followed by Philippines and Malaysia. So when we think of coconut milk production, it is very important to know the composition of coconut kernel. So coconut kernel is almost moisture and fat. It is about more than 80% moisture and fat. and followed by protein, sugar, ash, and carbohydrate. When we extract coconut milk, the composition differ from the method of coconut milk extraction. And we can see that fat content varies from 12 to 38%. And the previous presentation, we saw that it is about 40% or somewhat approximately 40%. And then we can see that when we produce this milk with this 12 to 38% fat and water about 73 to 76, and some protein, sugar, and ash, and some carbohydrate, this coconut refuse contain many large amount of fat. In dry basis, it is about 42%, and many sugars and ash and some carbohydrate. This carbohydrate content is non-sugar carbohydrate, and it considered as fiber, and it contains large amount of fat. So this can be used for other purposes, should not be thrown away. So coconut milk is the milky fluid obtained by manual or mechanical extraction of fresh coconut kernel with or without addition of water. So it is a white, opaque, protein, oil, water emulsion, and essentially free from fiber. Normally, coconut milk does not contain fiber. So coconut milk and cream, the difference between the fat content. So coconut cream is the emulsion extracted from mature coconut kernel without added water. So coconut cream contains fat greater than 20%, and it normally range between 20 to 40%. Coconut milk is the emulsion extracted from coconut kernel with added water, and it contains fat greater than 12.5 and less than 20%. So this processing condition differs with the buyer's request. So when we produce coconut milk for commercial purpose, normally buyers set the fat content. As a result, coconut cream is diluted to give the required fat content. So coconut cream is used for production of coconut milk powder, and coconut milk is approximately 12% fat, which is used for cooking purpose. So this is the use of coconut milk. So we produce coconut milk at home in most of the countries who produce coconut. It is for domestic food preparation like curries in this form. And it is used for preparation of domestic dessert preparation like ice cream, pudding, cake, and so on. And it is a value. It is used for value addition to many in industrial level like production beverages, nut, cocoa, whipping cream, and so on. So there is a large range of wide range of coconut milk-based products. So from the figures that we export coconut milk to other countries, we saw that lot of and there is a big market available for coconut milk. So it is used for many other countries who does not produce coconut. So this is how coconut milk is prepared at domestic level to prepare our food. And we take the husk coconut and split into two parts and scrape and add water, normally in 1:1 ratio of water, and squeeze and filter. So we can obtain coconut milk about 12% fat and partially defatted coconut refuse. And this is how it is produced in industrially, because in industrial scale is different from domestic scale because it is produced for others and it is produced in hygienic condition, and it is produced by normally people who do not have coconut in their countries. So when dehusked coconut, we normally remove the shell, and then we remove the brown part of the outer testa, and then wash with water, this chlorinated or potable water, and then we blanch to reduce microbial load, and then disintegrate. In industry, we disintegrate it to cut into small pieces, and then we press it using screw press or hydraulic press. So screw press is just like a fruit juice machine extractor, and hydraulic press is to press to get milk. So using this two types of machine, we can get the coconut milk, and then it is going through a strainer to remove the particles, and then coconut milk with greater than 35% is obtained, and this is called coconut cream actually, and it is diluted as buyer's request. So it is the buyer's request that we can produce coconut milk in different fat contents, and then we can add some preservatives and thickeners to buyer's specification, and then have pasteurization and homogenization to have homogeneous coconut milk, and then cooling and filling into can, and then we can have retort cans at 120 degrees centigrade for 20 minutes, or we can have bags stored in refrigerated condition. So this is in the industrial scale. So quality control technique of coconut milk production. So normally in this production, we have to have surfaces of pre-processing area should be clean, and the quality of nut, we always should consider about the quality of nut. It should be natural, ungerminated, unspoiled, and the nuts without any crack at the site of processing. So screening nuts at every stage to confirm the quality of nut is very important. And the washing, we have to wash with the chlorinated water to reduce possible microbial contaminations. And steaming, it is we have to blanch it at least 90 degrees centigrade for 30 seconds, and pasteurization followed by packaging and sterilization. And coconut, there are some problems associated with processing of coconut milk, and it is because first thing is it is low acid food. The coconut milk pH of coconut milk is about 6, so it is very difficult to preserve coconut milk, and it is not physically stable. Within 5 to 10 hours, it separates into layers like cream layer and middle skim milk and bottom of proteinaceous matter. So natural stability of coconut milk is believed to be due to the presence of natural emulsifiers, generally through protein and phospholipids. But in coconut milk, these components are very less. So it is difficult to preserve coconut milk, and it separates into layers when we keep coconut milk in few minutes. So short-term preservation is easily affected by pasteurizing the milk. Attempts for long-term storage and stabilize coconut milk against microbial, chemical, and physical spoilage is successful. So blanching of coconut kernel is the inactivation of enzyme, mostly lipase, that cause undesirable changes during processing and subsequent storage of food product. So washing of the meat with water containing 100 ppm hydrogen peroxide followed by blanching at 80 degrees centigrade has been studied for keeping coconut milk preserved. Commercially, shelf life extension of coconut milk has been achieved primarily through high technique like high technically canning, aseptic packaging, and so on. So coconut milk cannot be heated at temperatures greater than 80 degrees centigrade as it is coagulated. This protein of coconut milk is coagulated at a temperature greater than 80 degrees centigrade. So our heat processing should be less than 80 degrees centigrade. So in fracturizing coconut milk, it is always done at 75 degrees centigrade to reduce the coagulation of protein. So high temperature short time at 70 to 72 degrees centigrade for less than 60 seconds, that is less than 1 minute, and cooling fast to 35 to 40 degrees centigrade has been effective in controlling enzymatic deterioration of coconut milk. So hot filled into can, steamed, washed, and stewed at 120 degrees at 75 minutes has also been experimented. And shelf life is 1 year if properly stored in clean, cool, and dry place away from direct sunlight. So we can extend the shelf life of coconut milk by introducing proper pasteurization and sterilization condition. So these are the standard for coconut milk in Sri Lanka. And we can see that here that coconut milk fat content is 12.5. If it is light, low fat coconut milk, it is minimum fat content is 5. And skim coconut milk, it has about 2.5% fat. Coconut cream, we have minimum fat content is 20. And coconut cream concentrate is about fat content is minimum is 29%. So we can see that pH is always neutral, about 6 to 7 pH. So this is the main disadvantage in coconut milk, that we cannot keep this and we have to introduce technology for preserving coconut milk. So some ingredients are allowed in for preserving coconut milk. So it is always the buyer's request. If buyers are saying they don't want to add any preservative or ingredient, we can just pasteurize coconut milk. Or if they allow, we can add coconut water, maltodextrin, and sodium caseinate, emulsifiers, stabilizers, and limits are applied to commercial sterility level for canned products, bottle products, and aseptically packed food is applied. And always heavy metal is kept below 0.1 ppm. So this is processing of coconut milk for domestic consumption. So when we produce for domestic consumption, we have to keep it for a short time, because for in domestic consumption, many people consume coconut milk, and our coconut milk should not have a long shelf life. So in this study, we have tried to process coconut milk for domestic consumption. So here normal coconut we selected for germinated, rotten, and cracked nuts we have removed, and it was washed with 0.01 chlorinated water and let it drain. And nuts were opened and sanitized with 0.01% hydrogen peroxide, and then we scrape the coconut with electric scraper. And this is how electric scraper is working. And then we extract the coconut milk using hydraulic press. So first, coconut steam blanch for 10 minutes. After scraping, it was steam blanch for 10 minutes to reduce initial microbial load. and then milk was extracted using hydraulic press machine. Then milk was diluted to 20% fat with potable water and mixed well, and it was heated to 55 degrees centigrade and added stabilizers and antioxidant, followed by homogenization for 15 minutes. The milk was pasteurized at 73 degrees for different periods of time in a water bath with stirring. The milk was immediately hot filled and cooled under running tap. The pasteurized milk sample were packaged and stored at 4 degrees centigrade. So we tried 3 types of stabilizers because many people like to have a homogeneous coconut milk package. So we tried 3 types of stabilizers. One is 1% sodium caseinate and 1% sodium stearoyl lactate, and the combination 0.5% combination of these 2 stabilizers, and we compared it with coconut milk without any stabilizers. And coconut milk was pasteurized. So we tried 3 types of pasteurization temperature time combination at 72 degrees centigrade for 10, 20, and 30 minutes, and one with no pasteurization. So these were packed in aluminum laminate pouches and nylon pouches, and we studied free fatty acid chain peroxide value, and we analyze pH and Brix value and organoleptic characteristic with time. And microbial count, total plate count, we observed with pasteurization, and with the storage time. And sensory evaluation was conducted to find out any difference between 2 products after storing this product for 2 and 4 weeks period. And this is the results. From this we can see that in Sri Lanka, this one coconut will give about 250 gram of coconut kernel, and we can extract coconut cream about 144 gram, that is about 57%. And our fat content of coconut cream is about 35 to 35%. And we can extract coconut milk in 57 to 58%. So in this coconut milk, we can see that it is about pH is 6, Brix is 9, and without depending on the treatment, we can see that pH is not decreasing to acid level, and it is always in neutral side. So in this one, we can see that when we change the type of stabilizers with time, we can see that free fatty acid content did not increase the 0.8%, and we can see that we are in this without addition of stabilizers, we can see that free fatty acid content increases after about 17 days, but it does not increase 0.8%. So when we keep the free fatty acid level as 0.8%, we can see, we can observe that we can use 4 types of stabilizers to coconut milk. But when we see this stability of emulsion with stabilizers, we can see that when we use the combination of stabilizers, we can keep the coconut milk in homogenized way. So layers are not separating, but when you use sodium caseinate or sodium stearoyl lactate and control, we can see that layers are separated. So if somebody wants to keep coconut milk as this, we can use emulsion or stabilizers. And if doesn't matter if the layer separation, we can accept coconut milk is easily separable, and we can produce coconut milk without adding any stabilizers. So this one, we can see that when we introduce pasteurization, no, without pasteurization, we cannot keep coconut milk more than 15 days in refrigerated condition. Free fatty acids content exceed 1%. So from this, we can see that coconut milk should be pasteurized if we have to keep for long time. If it is the centigrade 72 degrees centigrade for 10, 20 or 30 minutes, we can use these temperatures. But when we get the microbial plate count, we observe that 72 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes is most appropriate for keeping coconut milk safely for long time. That means about 1 month. So if we if our pasteurized coconut milk is stored in normal temperature, we cannot keep it for less than 24 hours. We can keep at about 24 hours, but if you refrigerated it, or we can keep it for 1 month. So in this, we can see that in 14 days time, coconut milk with fresh and processed milk. Processed milk is what we pasteurize, and this is fresh milk, and we can see that there is no any significant difference between the two type of coconut milk. That means at 14 days we can have fresh processed milk as good as fresh milk. And if it is tested with after 28 days, we can see that texture was affected. So that means that due to the stabilizer, this texture was affected in the processed milk, and fresh milk, it was good. So from this, we can see that we can safely keep coconut milk for 28 days. But when we add stabilizers, it has some texture is affected, and it is sometimes not acceptable. So when we see the machinery needed for small scale coconut milk processing unit, we can start with coconut scrapers. Manual or mechanical scrapers are available. So if it is micro level, we can use manual scrapers. So milk extractor, micro scale industry can use a hydraulic press machine. Larger one can use milk extracting machine, that is like fruit juice extracting machine. Steamer, before milk extracting, blanching of coconut kernel should be done. So we have to fabricate small steamers to steam coconut milk, and stainless steel utensil is needed for pasteurized coconut milk at 72 degrees for 30 minutes. And we need glass bottle or polythene bags. So we have to sterilize these before use. So we have to have equipment to sterilize these glass bottles. And bottle or bag sealers we need, and cool room for storing finished product. For some of the items, so this is the mechanical scraper, and this is the manual scraper. So we can use either these for scraping coconut in domestic level. These are the industrial scale. In the industrial scale, we remove the shell and then we peel and disintegrate. So this can be done manually in small scale, and this can be done in large scale. So this is the hydraulic press machine. So this type of machine is can be operated for in small scale, and this machines are in large scale production. So coconut milk for domestic purpose can be processed with minimum heat treatment followed by packaging in aluminum laminated polythene and linear low density polyethylene as it needs short storage time. For increasing shelf life, semi-automatic or fully automatic handling should be operated. Pasteurization of coconut milk with added water at 72 degrees for 30 minutes is sufficient for storage of coconut milk for domestic purpose. So that is all my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandi. I must say that was very in-depth and very technical presentation. So we encourage our participants to log into the YouTube channel afterwards to find the slides, so that slides are recording, and also we are providing a link to access the slides. It was a very detailed presentation, and I'm sure there will be many questions during our Q&A, as well as persons contacting you, Dr. Chandi, to provide them with more information on your presentation and as it relates to processing of coconut milk and cream. So thank you very much for that presentation, Dr. Chandi. Okay, participants, there will be a Q&A session afterwards. So, but in the meantime, we encourage you to place your questions in the chat, and later on we will have a Q&A where you will have an opportunity to ask your questions live, okay? Without any more delay, we invite up to Mr. Tomas Medina from the Philippines to present on the marketing of coconut milk, cream, and yogurt. Mr. Tomas Medina, thank you very much for the opportunity to listen to you and to hear you speak. So go ahead with your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. There we go. So, yes. Good evening, everyone from the 31 countries listening and the 280 participants. My name is Tom Medina from a company called Brand Esports. We are exporters, investors in manufacturing in the Philippines for medium and small scale coconut processing and other products. And we are a coconut trader, broker, and exporter for the last 35 years. Next slide, please. Coconut milk and cream, I will not delve too much on the definition anymore, but I would like you to see, because you are from the Caribbean, with a few exceptions from our friends from the Pacific Islands in PNG. Well, in the Caribbean, these are three of the brands that are most well-known, made popular by the Jamaican group Grace Kennedy, the Goya group of Dominican Republic, and the same with Coco Lopez. These are the three coconut product applications which are being exported worldwide. Unfortunately, for some of these products, they are now being produced in Thailand. So before I continue, and these are the health benefits, which again, I would not delve on too much because they have been explained already by the two previous speakers. This is a rough estimation of what comes out of the coconut, which I think most of us are familiar living in coconut countries. But let me stay with this slide and let me just complement the data that you just have heard from the two speakers based on, I hope you would get more insight and you listen because these are not in my presentation. Number one, there was a presentation on the total volume of exports. And you notice that Thailand supersedes the Philippines and Indonesia by more than, I think, 8-folds. So why is this so when in fact the coconut hectareage of Thailand is only 1/3 of the Philippines or 1/4 of the Philippines and Indonesia? It is simply because Thailand has learned how to maximize the usage of the raw material as well as develop a way of segregating the raw materials for the different processing entities in the country. So imagine a country that has 1/4 the size supply of coconuts from the Philippines and Indonesia, producing 8 times more product, exporting 8 times more than what we have. Number two, coconut milk as a form of recovery from nuts differ from country to country, from island to island. Even in our own dear Philippines, the the extraction or the portion or percentage of white meat and also the extraction of coconut milk differ from island to island or sometimes even from province to province. Number 3, in commercial terms, as we move along so that you will be more aware as you see the labels that I will present later on, under Codex Alimentarius, the classification of coconut cream was anything that exceeds 18% is supposed to be coconut cream. But commercially, there are 6 variations of coconut milk, whether they are in tetra all the way to cans, pouches, etc. So there's 5 to 7, 8 to 10, 12 to 14, 17 to 19, 20 to 22, and 24%. Now for industrial, then you have a 32%. Number 4, in the process, because I know some of you will want to build plants, I just would like to highlight on the blanching side. While the temperature may differ depending on, again, the kind of nut that you have, let me caution you on the blanching side, because especially for those who are interested to build coconut milk factories, it is very important that you blanch with the right time and the right time duration and the right temperature. Otherwise, you end up losing a good quality coconut milk. Okay? And then on the retort or the heating of the coconut milk to prolong its shelf life, commercially, again, and I would like to speak commercially, when we build plants in the Philippines or the ones that we built in Indonesia and in India, what defines the good temperature is the technical test that you have to conduct, the heat penetration test on cans, and maybe the FO values on your aseptic lines. Okay, but the most important thing is that, and that's why my favorite, I told Ms. Miradula that my favorite subject or favorite product in the coconut is coconut milk. It's because you have to treat the coconut milk like a lady. From your pumps to your tanks, to your extractors, to your squeezers, up to your processing, you have to treat it like a lady compared to the coconut water. Because as the previous speaker said, it is very sensitive, it is low acid, it is fat and oil, and there's water. So let me remind you that as you want to build that plant, as you want to create a product out of that coconut milk extraction, make sure you treat it. And that's why there are very critical components of a design in the processing side that would make you a good coconut milk. And then there was also the mention of extraction. I know that in the Caribbean and in some of the Pacific Island nations, we don't have the hectarage that maybe that Indonesia and Philippines and Sri Lanka enjoys. But let me tell you this. The purpose of my presentation is to really define you where you're going. And so therefore, the extraction method also defines what kind you're going to have product-wise. Because hydraulic press will make you the most recovery out of the white meat, but it doesn't give you the flexibility that a screw press would. And then on the additives, there was also a mention on the additives being the use of sodium caseinate and sodium stearoyl. Based on commercial practice again, while sodium caseinate is an acceptable stabilizer, and the others that are being added as emulsifiers have been mentioned also, like CMC carboxymethyl cellulose, santan gum, etc. Remember that as we go to the healthier side, if you want a better value, because that's what where we want to go, you want to take an additive that will be certifiable as non-GMO, something that is non-dairy, and something that has multiple sources. And normally, that points straight out to guar gum. And then or if you go aseptic, if the European side or the European Commission or ITC will support any of you to go into aseptic, you would have to measure and you would have to consider the availability of the packaging supplier. Why? Because in the case of the Philippines, we are very dependent on Tetra Pak. We don't have Combi Block and we don't have the other supplier simply because they don't have the numbers here. But if you go to Thailand, then you have Tetra and Combi Block. Or in Indonesia, you have a plurality of Combi Block machines as a packing machine. Okay, and lastly, but not the least, is that, as I said, you have to be careful on the setup that you will make for coconut milk, because if the milk is treated with shock, then the coconut milk that you get has a shock quality. Okay, so let me rest at that, and let me present to you an array of how coconut milk, coconut cream is presented to the market in various forms, how the specifications are presented, and I hope you would consider this. Now, this is the integrated coconut processing plant. When you get a consultant or somebody who builds the plant, for you to determine the profitability of the products that you will have, because as you know, one investor said they were used to only having one raw material and one product at the end. In our case, for coconut people, we have already the water as a given. Don't mention the non-food, but on the food side, what you make out of that kernel, that white kernel, makes a lot of difference. And therefore, aside from this processing parameter or processing diagram, what is very critical that your consultant or the one who will build your plant for you is the materials balance diagram. Meaning, what do I recover if I opt to produce this using this raw material, using this packaging, using this machine? So, next slide, please. This is a presentation that you can find online from Tetra Pak. This is a Tetra Pak idea of what could be from a perspective of from the raw coconut all the way to the byproducts. So I will not delve on it because, as I said, my previous colleagues have mentioned about it already. But as you go through that, then I'd like you to look at it. Next will be the presentation of the specification. And these are live coconut milk specifications in cans on how it is, especially because ITC is supporting it. So I chose a European version of specification sheet. So not only do you have the units of packaging or percentage, but you would have to also have the per consumer unit, the per carton tray, and you would have to all the details of that. And you know that, you know, for religious certifications, even the cartons have halal certificate nowadays, which was non-existent when I started in the coconut in the mid-80s. So for me, this is one way of presenting it. Next slide, please. There's 3 slides, I think, for this European version. This is the second one, which discusses also the specs. And this would already enlighten you. When you present, when you actually have a plant, you would like to say, I will not learn the simpler way, but you would like to do it the professional way. And so this is how the Europeans expect to see the specification of coconut milk. Next slide, please. So it even goes down all the way to the analysis of the ingredients, the palettes, and the analysis of ash and everything. Next slide, please. This is the biological side of it. So you will see now what kind of bacteria is being analyzed and looked at, and at what percentage, what coliform units. Next one, please. This is on the toxins. Okay. Unfortunately, this is something that is very new that has come up only during the pandemic, but it is now required for European markets. Next slide, please. This is the nutrition analysis of the product that you are producing. So some of you would not have normally don't include and compute this as it is. But going through the nutrition value, I would like you to always have two versions of it. One is the American version, the nutrition facts, which follows the FDA, US FDA, which you can find on their website, fda.gov/nutrition labeling. And then you would have to include in the American side the data for vitamin D and potassium. Very important. They're not anymore concerned about vitamin A and C, but vitamin D and potassium should have an analysis. Next slide, please. Yeah, this one. So D3, you'll see there, and then there should be some potassium, but the American one has to have potassium. Next one. This would require the documentation that you would have to be able to give, which I will later expound on. Okay. This is an Indonesian one, which again, you will see what differs from it. This is a standard one, which is now being used in America for industrial size coconut milk. You will see that all of the codex standards that were used are enumerated on the right-hand side. Which was used to analyze your pH, which one was used to analyze come up with your FFA value, and the same was as the other metals or components of the coconut milk. This is aseptic, by the way. This is minimum of 5, 10, 25, 200, and 1,000 liters. Next slide, please. Yeah. This one is a Philippine one. This was one of the companies I worked for back in the mid-80s, in the 90s. And this was the old way of presenting it. So you'd have a product description, an application, a physical characteristics, and chemical. Next slide. And of course, ingredients, GMO-free. And it was very, very different. You see, this one is issued in 2007 compared to the other ones that I gave you, which are all issued in 2021. Next slide. Just for you to appreciate what was the change as far as the type of specifications being issued to buyers. And please don't get me wrong, even if these are bulk or retail, the first one, the European version, what I showed you, is actually a retail product. And it has to be more specific as you go down the chain. Next slide. We go next slide. Yeah, so storage and handling instructions is very important because at that time there was a lot of damage in transit or during storage. Next slide. Towing instructions, because normally, of course, in the colder countries in the north, whether North Asia, North America, or Northern Europe, then you have some freezing that happens during the winter time. And so there has to be towing instructions. And this now gives you a view on how to put in a towing instruction onto your specification sheet, which is not regularly taught in the commercial presentations. Next slide. Passive means not so soft. This one is when you're towing an open bag. When you open the bag and you want to thaw it, how do you do it? So the other one's passive, meaning it's still in the aseptic bag, it's still in the bulk bag, but this one is an open one. So next slide. Sorry, I have to go with this very quick because this is 50 slides. This is aseptic. This is, again, something for you to open your mind on. This is normally cream as we know it is just coconut cream with a very high percentage for industrial. But this one, I produced specifically for your market. And I was the first one who sold this in the market in industrial size way back in the 90s. So this one is sweetened. It's like condensed coconut cream in bulk. So it's being used by large liquor companies. Next slide. Yes, this is the same. Next slide, please. Okay. So this is the type of packaging for aseptic coconut milk. It comes, as I said, 4 by 5 kilos, 1 by 20 kilo aseptic bag, the 200 kilo drum. And if you are able to sell to very large users like Vita Coco, Danone, Coca-Cola, sanitarium in Australia, then they can take on a 1,000 liter or 1 metric ton bag. Okay, next slide. These are the retail products of the largest coconut producer in the world for coconut milk and cream and beverage, which is Cara brand by the Sambu Group. And if you have time tonight, please visit the website of Sambu Group. You can find them on YouTube or you can find them online. Please do so. So Cara is selling to over 90 countries right now. And they have milk powder, coconut milk, and coconut cream in Tetra. And just for the heck of it, they went also for cans. Cans is never their strength. But Tetra, they really rule it out of the world, especially in Asia. In North America for aseptic bulk, I think they can export as much as 800 containers a month to North America. Next slide, please. Per month. These ones are the ones from Thailand. This is one of the world's largest brands for retail can and retail Tetra Pak coconut milk, which is the Tep Padongpon Group or the Chowco brand, as we all know it popularly. This is the world's largest coconut milk producer in retail. And because the Thai has been successful in creating the concept that they're the kitchen of the world and promoting their culinary dishes, then the Thai products, especially the application of coconut milk, not only into Thai, but even South Asian dishes, has been a standard or a norm already in the industry. Next slide, please. Now, since we're talking about coconut milk, aside from coconut yogurt, I'd just like to highlight you that there is such a thing as coconut milk powder and coconut milk non-dairy creamer, whether in liquid form or in powdered form. And what people have done right now, and these are popular brands, you even have Nutiva with the same product. Nutiva, the BCO popular brand in North America. This is Coconut Cloud with various flavors of coconut milk creamer for coffee, with some of them spice, the other one's original, the other one's vanilla, and the other one's is, I think it's pumpkin spice. And the rest are just normal. You have Califia offering like half and half coconut milk as a creamer. Next slide, please. And of course, the large group of Danone, which owns several of the brands, Silk, Danone, Horizon, etc. They are the, I think, well, the Filipinos are never a yogurt people, but when So Delicious came out, I started eating yogurt. So, except that we don't have them in the Philippines that much. So, but it's a trend that has come up really, and it's now being done by large brands, as you will see on the next slides. Next slide, please. This is coconut milk powder made by my previous company, which is, they have them in 200 ml coconut cream. This is basically to compete versus Cara in Indonesia. And they have Fiesta coconut milk powder. And just to give you a bit of history, I think you saw on one of the slides of my previous speakers that there was a name called Hagenmeier, which was the author and the father of coconut milk powder. And the very first spray dryer of Hagenmeier is with Fiesta brands. They have retired that 50-tonner coconut milk powder machine, and now they have more than 2,000 metric tons capacity for coconut milk powder. And of course, they have the cream. So we'll go now. Next slide, please. These are some of the other, clients of Sambu Group. So Chobani, Kite Hill, Blissful, and there's Kefir. Or some Indians are, I think some Indians also are, Cara also supplies some jaggery, coconut jaggery. Next one. Coconut milk powder, of course, is ruled by the world's largest. That's why you saw in the slide of the statistics that Sri Lanka is the #1 exporter of coconut milk powder, primarily because of Nestle Lanka. Maggi as a brand is the world's largest. Then you have Emma, which produces milk powder and cream and water. And you have SNP of Malaysia, which under the Santan brand, which is, I think, the third by far. Next slide. This is Celebs Coconut Corporation. As you can see, there's a plurality of product, but why did I feature this company out of a number of companies in the Philippines? Is because, number one, this is a totally unknown brand. They are in the southern island of Mindanao on the northern side. They don't really have marketing, but because of their continued presence, and that's why I think if you really plan to launch either a group brand or a per country brand in the Caribbean, I would suggest that you come up with a brand, a graphic design that's attractive, because this company was, well, it can afford it, went to every single show possible. And would you believe that you can see them alongside Cara, Chauco, and other brands in the markets as far as the Middle East, Africa, North America, and they have signed up partnerships. So what I would like to encourage you is that they produce all of this because the guy who owns this factory comes from a very wealthy family in timber and banana chips. Is also the banana chips king in the Philippines before. And what is admirable is that their diligence gave them that kind of market clout in their own small way. Again, they don't compete against, they chose their battle. They're not battling it out with Vita Coco and the rest, but they are where they should be with the volumes that they have. Next slide. This is Thai Coconut. Well, in Asia, we call them Thai Coco or Thai Coconut Public Company. Again, one of the largest private label and branded coconut product in Asia. They also export everywhere, but I believe that with due respect to Tep Padongporn Chauco has been there for a long, long time with 3 factories, and this one has become large. They're the first one who produced the what do you call this? The bubbly coconut water in bottles. Again, they're huge enough to export so much around the world that they pack for a lot of major house brands around the world. Next slide. Century Pacific Agri, one of the other 2 aside from Axilum Fresh Fruit, which is publicly listed in the Philippines. In the Philippines, we have 2 publicly listed integrated coconut facilities. One is Fresh Fruit Axilum, and the other one is Century Pacific Agri. This company taught the Filipinos how to eat tuna. They made their money out of tuna and sardines and meat products in cans. They're the largest cannery in the Philippines until they consulted with me and said, help us produce a proper coconut product. And so today, you will see them producing. They're one of the largest long-term producers for Vita Coco and Costco under the Kirkland brand. And their brands they're actually branding now their own coconut products under Coco Mama, Coco Daily, and Aqua Coco. So you will see they have the pouch format, they have the tetra format. They also now just recently launched their own cans format, but I cannot show them to you because it's just coming out. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Adson Coco. Adson Coco is not too huge, not too small, but what is amazing about the owner of this factory is that he is an inventor more than a marketing guy. So way back, he just had his own King coconut milk powder. You barely see it at the back of the group photo. But he was one of the very first who came up with a very good quality MCT oil. He was the very first one who partnered with Dr. Fife for VCO and MCT. And now, because you produce MCT, you have a lot of byproducts. And those byproducts he uses to produce non-food products. Like he's the first one to produce the nasal spray, the mouth spray, the tropical balm, the VCO soap, the lotion, the MCT powder, the MCT choco powder, and others. So what's admirable with this guy is that he really has a lot of stock of R&D behind him. And now he's finally listening to consultants like us who say, can you please improve the label? And the label has improved so much. They're one of the oldest coconut factories, but it's just that they have been very conservative on the marketing side, but right now they're really also opening up, and they have improved even the branding of their factory. They've built a new factory just for the new high-end products that they want. And by the way, if you think that Cara is the largest in the world, this small company or medium-sized company, if you'd like to put it in the world of coconuts, is the largest selling and the most expensive brand of coconut products in China. They literally control Chinese market with Cara. Next slide. Lung Khoi is a brand that I admire from Vietnam because they have come up with a lot of products. I cannot show you all the products they have. So from coconut flour, coconut sugar, coconut butter, milk, coconut milk drinks, coconut water, lotions, whatever. This company has put up subsidiaries in Europe and in the United States, and therefore the marketing has been proving to be very effective, that they also now produce for certain brands in the matured markets like Europe and the North American side. And they have they're also quite active in Japan and a little bit in China. So Lung Khoi is one of those companies, aside from Betrimex and the others, whom I admire in Vietnam. Because Vietnam has 1/4 or 1/5 of the coconut hectarage that the Philippines and Indonesia has. And yet, look at how effective they have produced a range of products from that very little supply of coconut raw material. And by the way, let me tell you that because of the expansion of certain markets of the demand, what is happening now is that Thailand, Vietnam, and China buys raw coconuts from Indonesia and the Philippines to be able to come up with the production of more coconut products. And that's why coconut prices have remained high, even if it should have remained already gone down, because the demand is so high that, you know, when you feed 1 billion people in China, and then you have about 600 million consumers in ASEAN, in the 10, 11 countries. And then you have Southeast Asia like India and Pakistan who also consume coconut. It's no joke. Next slide, please. This is, of course, because Sri Lanka, again, is one of the largest coconut producing countries. Renuka is one of the brands that I admire in Sri Lanka. Not only because of the range. So what makes Sri Lanka different from Indonesia and Philippines? There's one product that we don't produce that they have: creamed coconut. Creamed coconut are used by South Asians, but basically Indians, and they use this for cooking because they want the grit of the coconut in the food that they eat, especially if you make the curries and whatever, the masala sauces. So because we are now talking about a Caribbean perspective, producing a creamed coconut would only leave you the burden of having coconut water. Why? It's because you just like grated the coconut and made it creamy. It's like putting all the coconut in an osterizer or a food processor, make it so fine. You just have to comply with the mesh size. So there's a Urshell. The brand of the cutter is called Urshell, URSCHELL. Urshell cutter makes it to 0.01 micron, and then therefore you have creamed coconut. And then you put it in a plastic bag, put it in a box, a carton box, and that's it. So the only worry that you have is the water. What do I do with the water? Do I make it into a vinegar? Or do I produce coconut water in cans? Do I produce frozen coconut water? Or do I produce coconut water concentrate? So this is what I like about Sri Lanka as a country, because they also do it for the dishes. And of course, their pride of having, if the Thailands have the Namhom coconut variety, which is aromatic, then the Sri Lankans also have their pride, the king coconut, which is a different profile of coconut water. It just depends on the kind of raw material that you really have, the variety of coconut that you raise. And if you can see the branding, it's very consistent, very nicely done. But when they go organic, then they go cocoa meat. Next slide, please. Silver Mill Group. This is when I was young, 35 years ago. This company was called Silva Brothers, and now they became Silver Mills. And they are producers of cream coconut, desiccated coconut, they have coconut flour, their VCO, and they are also producers for Vita Coco. They also have coconut cream. So Silver Mill is a very standard, very long-term player. They've been there since the 70s, I think, or early 80s. One of the larger coconut facilities early on in Sri Lanka. Next slide. If you have time tonight, this is the online view of the Sambu Group's presentation. I'd like you to look at it, be inspired, just like I do all the time. I've been part of it from the very beginning in the 90s. So please, please watch it. It's Sambu Group. Just type it on your Google and you will see. It's a very inspiring coconut project in Asia. Next slide. Oops, go up. Okay. So, okay. So I think when you go for coconut production, what is very important is that you accumulate a certain number of food safety, religious, and compliance certificates. So I just like to mention them because ITC will be behind all of you, all 281, all 31 countries. ITC, I hope, will support you. Right, William? Anyway, so you have to have the food safety FSSC 22000. I forgot the other S. You can have them certified by a number of agencies like SGS, Control Union, or Intertech. They do all of these certifications. That is actually for food quality, food safety. And you can pay a certain amount in $1,000 and they can convert it into the US Global Food Safety Initiative, or the GFSI. ISO 14001 for environmental compliance. Non-GMO if you are using non-GMO products. EU for EU organic, and then you have the USDA organic. You have halal and kosher. And of course now people are very concerned about social compliance. So that's SMETA or SEDEX. So you have to, if you can, go up to the 4 pillars compliance. Otherwise, you can go up to the second. I think minimum is 2 pillars. Next slide, please.
Mr. Thomas, you have only 5 more minutes.
Okay, no problem. We'll do it fast. Then these are the rest. So BRC for the European, IFOAM. Japan has also its own. And then the one that I'd like you to see on the left is the Chinese organic, which doesn't accept any and doesn't recognize any other organic. And the American Institute of Baking, and also their certification for your laboratory in-house. Next slide. This is the mini integration plant diagram. So as I said, always, I prefer that you do a 20 metric ton per day input, but in case you cannot, then there are still alternatives to go lower, but revenue-wise and product-wise, there will be limitations. Next slide. This is the shelling and paring of coconuts. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is a large setup. This is how we are set up in the Philippines. You normally have about 30 to 40 people on one side, 30 to 40 people who are shelling, and then you have double the number of people who pare the nuts. Next slide. And they go by conveyors all the way. So this is the pared meat, the extraction, the grinder, and then you have in the Philippines, we normally use screw press instead of hydraulic. Hydraulic is only used by, I think, 2 small coconut milk factories in the Philippines. Next slide. This is the setup of a large 200 metric ton capacity, which would need about an investment of about $25 to $30 million. Next slide. This is the coconut milk extraction and processing plant from the filtration, the blending, and the homogenization. Oops, next slide. Sorry, I don't know why you have those Anyway, then you have the retort sterilization for cans. And so it depends also on what kind of machines do you use. And then you have the inline physical chemical analysis when you try to, what do you call this, extract some samples. Next slide. Next slide, please. Hello? Yeah. This is the dryer area. Next slide, please. Coconut milk by percentage. This slide will show you that Tetra Pak has grown because this one is a research done by Tetra. And they are saying that they have now 62% only in certain markets. Still, the largest one are the cans. Next slide, please. I don't know why we have those scratches. This is the coconut milk market insight per region, and you will see that it's continually grown. Okay, next slide. This is the coconut milk in snapshot. You see in 2019, we're 880 million, and it has been growing at 7%. So just like what Ms. has said, we have already doubled from 2012, and now we're looking to a higher market. Next slide. This is the range of clients and basis of products that you can go to, and the types of packaging. Next slide. Okay, so most researchers actually predict that we will be almost $2 billion in 2019 or 2025, something like that. But because that study, of which I was a part of, did not include the cans of coconut milk, it only included Tetra Paks and some of the bulk, where actually the real figure should be about almost $4 billion by 2027. Next slide. So these are some of the producers and their own brands or their clients. You will see that more and more branding takes over private label. Remember, without the brands that support the promotion, you will never have a market anymore. So whether your direction, my suggestion is if you can come up with a Caribbean direction, a PNG direction for branding, please do so. Next slide. In the Philippines, we have been only private label producers most of the time. So these are the problems or the challenges and opportunities. You have not enough producers because the demand is very high. So there's opportunity for you. There's not enough appropriate technology and compliance for the new entrants. And then there are few takers due to perceived risk for some new markets. For example, if you wanted to go and sell to Zambia or to Somalia, some people won't go in because the risks are very high, not unless you have somebody is there. And then branding is the lack of understanding of how a brand has to be built and how it has to be presented. Next slide. Yeah, okay. So these are the approximate prices for coconut milk. These are up to date as of today. So for aseptic, you go about to $2. If it's concentrate, it's about $2.50 to $2.70. Coconut milk powder, $6.50 to $7. These are all conventional, non-organic. Add 20% if it's organic. Candy is from $8 to $16 based on the 6 fat levels that the market accepts. Next slide. And this is the price of Tetra Pak based on the 2 levels of fat that is acceptable in Tetra Pak in the 201 liter size. Next slide. Distribution channels are almost everywhere. But again, when you approach the channels and the brands, remember that now it is not a matter of you producing a certain, say, this milk with this stabilizer and this packaging. When you want to produce for a private label, make sure you're adaptive to the application. The brand owners now will not give you a recipe. They would rather depend on your own recipe. And this is the change that has never happened before. This is actual commercial practice now. If I go to, say, Kirkland, if I go, say, to Grace will not teach you, I want this caseinate, I want this level. No, you have to come up with a presentation that will pass until you get it. Otherwise, on the third presentation, you lose the business. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, supply, compliance, and then there's the alternatives, okay, which some people feel they're more palatable, like soy and almond especially. Pandemic issues of the logistics and cash flow cycle, and then commoditization of the prices due to intense season harvest from Thai and Vietnamese producers at 20-25% off. Thailand and Vietnam are only the two countries which give 25% off during their high harvest season on the retail products. And that is something the Philippines never bought into. Next slide. So again, these are the market perspectives when you enter that I'd like you to consider. Number one, if you're going retail, please brand. If you cannot brand, then go to the private label. But remember, there is such a thing as acceptability of a formulation that may be yours or not yours, or maybe something that you have to reinvent new for them to accept. The processing technology that you will use, will you go aseptic, canned, frozen? Because if it is too small, again, don't get me wrong, there is a market for frozen coconut milk, then there's also a market for frozen coconut, and then you got the whole thing already. Or otherwise you freeze the coconut meat itself or shred it. And then, of course, there's the whole coconut if you like. And then packaging, so graphic design, sometimes it's not attractive enough. We make it so ethnic that it's not acceptable to mainstream markets or even to the general populace. Industrial, if you want to go industrials, then there's a ton of compliance and certification. Only those with large hectarage are encouraged to do so. In the Philippines, our barometer is that you have a 400-kilometer radius of supply for coconut. And then Horeca and private label. As I said, these are niche application, appropriate formulations and ingredients, and organoleptic factors, meaning if you look at Thailand, Thailand has so many sizes. Why? Because the 567 corn has a specific application that when they pour in for that dish, it's done. Why do we have a 5 to 7? Because it's used for the Tom Yum Goong soup. You just pour it and add the ingredients. Why do you have a 400 ml? Because that applies to most of the dishes already. Okay, and then pricing. Validity for retail and private label should be at least a minimum of 12 months, if not 18 months, and 6 months for industrial and Horeca. Sorry, it's Horeca, meaning hotel, restaurants, and catering. Is there one more slide? Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I hope you had a good listening. Thank you. Thank you, Shanita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. It was a very interesting presentation. I'm sure the processors and other interested persons learned a lot as to the marketing side of the products, coconut milk, cream, and yogurt, what to look out for, what not to do, and how to really thrive in the market. So thank you very much, Mr. Thomas, for that presentation. So now we will go on to take out some questions. We had some in the chat. It's our Q&A session. So I will start with some of the questions that will pose in the chat. Please be reminded that you are free to ask questions by raising your hand, and we'll call on you to unmute your mic to ask your questions to your presenters. Before I proceed, I'll also inform you that we have an extended Q&A session coming up on December 14th. So even if you don't have an opportunity to ask your questions today, do not feel anxious. We have a very extended technical session just for questions and answers on this webinar coming up on December 14th, to look out for that. Okay, so we'll start with our questions. The first question was on the yogurt presentation. The question reads, is cassava starch the only thickener that can be used? So that would go to Dr. Titiek, who presented on yogurt.
Yes, I already. Okay, I will try to answer the question. One question, where do you get the probiotic starter from? Can you make it? Okay, we have a probiotic culture where we isolated from Indonesian and fermented food from Indonesian. namely we isolated from fermented milk. We called Dadi, and the culture is Lactobacillus plantarum Dat13. And we have 2 culture probiotic from fermented cassava. We called Gatot from Indonesia. The culture is Lactobacillus plantarum Mut7 and Lactobacillus plantarum T3. And now we save the culture, the probiotic culture in food and nutrition culture collection in Yogyakarta. Okay, that answer for one question, and the 2 question, can all coconut be used to make the cream, milk, and yogurt? Yes, all coconut we can make the coconut milk, coconut cream, and yogurt from coconut milk. And then the 3rd question is it is mentioned that 1% cassava flour and 6% sugar is added to the coconut milk. Is the percentage of both the stuff on basis of the total volume of the coconut milk that will be used for production at the moment? Okay, in the yogurt like from coconut milk making, we added the cassava starch about 1%, and sugar about 5% based on the volume of coconut milk. And question from Mrs. Sanita. The one question, maybe
Yes, we have another question that was posed as well.
Okay,
asking
yes.
about the shelf life. What is the shelf life of coconut yogurt?
Okay, the coconut yogurt can be saved for 1 month, about 1 month. Maybe for organic preservation can be added in yogurt like of coconut. For example, we can use extract of rosemary and cinnamon or clove for organic preservation. And we can, in this making of the yogurt like, we added of sugar about 5%, also act as preservative. So the sugar have role as a preservative. Okay, and maybe I apologize. I didn't prepare a video for yogurt making. Maybe the question is maybe I have.
I think these are some of the questions we had previously in the chat.
Yes,
Yes.
maybe I have answered the all question, Mrs. Sanita. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That's
Okay. Thank you.
You have. Thank you very much, Dr. Titiek, for providing the answers. We have another question in the chat. Question reads, what is the best way to use coconut milk to prevent spoiling quickly and separation in use of alcoholic punches?
Replication.
I think that question will go to Dr. Chandi,
Huh?
who presented on coconut milk.
Huh?
So what is the best way to use coconut milk to prevent spoiling quickly and separation in use of alcoholic punch? Alcoholic punch mean beverage?
Yes, it's in the Caribbean, we have alcoholic beverages where coconut milk is used.
Spoiling quickly. So to prevent spoiling quickly, we have to use heat treatment to heat at about 72 degrees centigrade if it is a batch process, and also high temperature short time. And in batch process, you have to heat about 20 to 30 minutes. And then high temperature short time, you can use about 1 minute. And then you cool it, and that prevents spoiling quickly. And if it is to prevent separation, you have to have stabilizer like sodium caseinate or sodium stearoyl lactate in 0.5%. Then it will be not separated.
Thank you very much. We have another question. I think that question we directed more to Mr. Thomas. In the Caribbean, we have a large population of smaller cottage scale processors. How much effort or investment should be put in the marketing or the brand development as opposed to product development, or should it be more of a one-to-one ratio for these two aspects of the business, marketing and brand development as opposed to product development?
The reason why I made designed my presentation tonight in such a way was for the listeners or our participants to be able to really grasp where they want to go. Because at the end of the day, whether I think you really have to put equal efforts. No, if you're just asking for the effort that has to be exerted, product development is one, and then there's of course the process as well. Then don't forget that there's the market. This is a supply chain that you have to make it very strong in every aspect. Now, as I said in my previous talks on the other coconut products, there are ways to develop it and grow as similar to the model, maybe just an innovation of the way the Sri Lankans actually captured their village type production and grew them to become entrepreneurial type. Because in the Philippines, the smallest groups that I know of producers is one that I'm a member of, called the Virgin Coconut Oil Producers Association, which includes small coconut sugar producers and BCO producers, blah, blah, blah. And these people have basically the local market to depend on because they don't have the compliances. Much as some of them have dreamt that they would like to enter the mainstream or the large buyers, they just simply don't have that compliance. And that's why after all of this is said and done, I would like to know, where would ITC come in to help the Caribbean countries or PNG or whoever with the plan of each? You have to really scale down and say, how much raw material output do I have? If you have skilled workers, are my skilled workers gonna stay as deshellers and pairers? Or am I gonna use machines now to improve on it because my cost on labor is high? There was a time the cost of labor was just so much. But in the Philippines, you had to eventually mechanize shelling, and now there's actually some factories which I cannot mention are using pairing machines already. So because imagine the ratio of one sheller is 2 pairers. So you have 3 person for every hole of machine paired together. And so normally the large factories would have 10 lines. Maybe a shift would have about 500-600 employees just on that section. And so in your case, as I said, in the Philippines, you have 2 small factories of coconut milk doing cans, which has only 4 holes or 5, I think. But they're using hydraulic press, just like what our colleague speaker from Sri Lanka said. And so they extract, but then the white meat now, the value of the white meat just goes to feeds. So that's why in the design of the enterprise, of the one that will be pursued by the participants, is very critical. Somebody who will design the materials balance to create a balance of what shall I get if I go through this process and want this product, because you can actually innovate depending on the community's ability and source of raw materials. Like for example, if I'm okay with coconut sugar, then I will have no coconut water, I will have no desiccated, I will have no cream, nothing except coconut sugar. I will just have coconut nectar, coconut amino, and coconut vinegar. That's it. But as I said, it depends on how. But for me, if you're going to ask me, you really have to get somebody who understands it, lay down, and then let ITC come in and say, look, aside from providing market access and maybe helping them out on the certification, and this happens in Europe, for example, if ITC can find a buyer in Holland or in the UK, these 2 countries, I don't know of Germany, but I know of the 2 countries because I've done it. They have buyers who say, oops, I'm interested. I am interested to help this community because I've done it in Africa. I'm doing it now in Africa. So they said, I want this factory to produce for me. And so what they did was to come up with a fund that is borrowed for in behalf of the community by the buyer in Europe, basically in Holland and the UK, and just to set it up. So they give them machines. You can never get cash. They give them the machines to set it up, and then they will do the marketing based on the story that will be created by the community that will produce the products. You see how wonderful it is?
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas, for that explanation. Participants, please be reminded to look forward for the December 14th extended Q&A, so you'll have an opportunity to ask many more questions. As we begin to wind down, we will note the last question that is being asked, and we will address it in the extended Q&A. So we will begin by thanking our partners, the EU CARIFORM Directorate, the OACPS, CARDI, and other important regional partners. A very special thank you to our speakers today, Mr. Tomas Medina, Dr. Titiek, Djaafar, Dr. Chandi Yalegama, and also to you participants for coming on board, for joining. Without you, we would not have a webinar. We thank you for your questions, and we look forward to seeing you. A quick announcement, our upcoming webinar, the date is not announced yet, but our next webinar will be on overview of coconut water production, introduction, productivity and improvement. So the next topic will be on coconut water. So look forward to that announcement. On your screen, you will see a very short poll. As we close, we encourage you to just answer the 2 questions posed. And we thank you very much once again for attending this webinar. So wherever you're joining us from, we appreciate your participation. So we say a pleasant good morning and good night to some of you, good evening to others for joining us. So we look forward to having you on our next webinar, as well as our Q&A on December 14th. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you.
For those who would want to have a more definitive answer, if you have questions that are very difficult, maybe the speakers could have enough time. If you can WhatsApp us or email us, I've given the WhatsApp on the presentation and the email as well, so that you can ask us and maybe we can prepare for some of the answers that you may need, so that it will be more productive on December 14th. From the last seminar